If you've seen my video on why a protruding belly might not be belly fat, then you're aware that there are other things that influence the visual presentation of our gut. Just to summarize the video, essentially what happens is your pelvis gets pushed forward, which influences where air goes, and we develop a belly breathing strategy. So essentially when we breathe in, our belly protrudes out further, but it's not necessarily fat, it's probably just a buildup of excess air, gas, and pressure that we can't get out of our system. I'm not saying you're gonna get a six-pack by learning how to breathe better and manage pressure, but what I am saying is that there are other things that influence it, and we can see some positive changes within the visual presentation of our belly if we learn how to manage pressure better within our rib cage and our thorax. But it's important to understand where we're starting from. So there's two main presentations that we see in individuals who have this sort of protruding belly, or a belly that might look not the way they want it to. The first one is a beer belly or a beer gut. Some people affectionately refer to this as a one pack, but this is more along the lines of the video that I described earlier, which I will link down below. With this presentation, it looks like they just have one big round ball in their gut, and oftentimes this does have a lot of fat involved within it, but when they do have that forward pelvis, it really does pronounce the presentation of this one pack the individual might have going on. If this person learned to manage pressure and not have such a strong belly breathing strategy, they might be able to bring their pelvis back in space more, which would take pressure off of this individual's gut, which is holding a lot of the gas, air, and pressure we take in when we inhale. The second thing, and the thing I want to talk about more in this video, is a pooch belly. Now with this presentation, it looks like there's a slight indentation within their abdomen around the belly button area, and you see this a lot of the times in females. The reason for that is females tend to be more narrow-framed individuals. They tend to have an infrasternal angle that is very constricted and compressed, and it comes together like this. Now, what's happening there underneath the surface? And there's a study that I'll link below that explains this in more detail. The diaphragm has descended. So when we inhale, our diaphragm comes downward. Now, the problem is when we have restrictions in our rib cage and within our abdomen, we have a diaphragm that gets descended more and more because it can't ascend upon exhalation. The obliques are muscles of forced exhalation. So when we exhale for a very long time out through our mouth, we do that for long enough, we're going to feel our obliques kick in. So what the obliques are trying to do is they're trying to compress the infrasternal angle. They're trying to bring it together so they can find a way to exhale the air out of their abdomen. What happens when the diaphragm descends and it stays descended, then the line of the fibers of the muscle actually change. Usually it's relatively vertical, which allows for the descension upon inhalation, ascension upon exhalation. But when we have a diaphragm that's so far descended, it actually changes the line of the fibers, so they start to become more horizontal, which changes the pressure gradient within our abdomen. When this happens, the abdomen is actually sucked inward and upward, and you see this quite commonly with people who have breathing disorders like COPD. If you couple an anterior pelvic tilt on top of that, you would have an abdomen that has a pooch belly, but it also protrudes outward a little bit more than it probably would when a pelvis is more neutral. Are we ever going to be able to fully resolve this? It's hard to say. I think it depends on genetics and age. Those are two huge factors that we don't have a lot of control over. The younger someone is, generally speaking, the more changes we can see in sort of a visual sense, whether that comes to posture, the belly, whatever the case is. But what's important here is it's not the visual presentation of our belly that matters that much. What's really important is how much is that restriction, how much is that presentation limiting your ability to move? And that's what I really care about. It's not always going to be resolved 100%. Can it get better? I think so, but it just depends on those other factors. So when addressing this pooch belly, we want to make sure that we can get a full exhale. We want to be able to ascend the diaphragm as it should upon exhalation. A position that's really good for these people is an inverted position. What I mean by that is the head is below the level of the hips. And think about it like this. When we breathe in, air is a gas and follows the path of least resistance, so our lungs are gonna fill from the bottom to the top, as it should due to the influence of gravity. But if I flip myself upside down, then I'm going to fill my lungs from the top to the bottom. Imagine filling up a water bottle with it tipped upside down. That's essentially what's going on. This is also going to allow us to get air into our rib cage first instead of potentially our belly. That's going to be advantageous for restoring function as well. When I'm in this inverted position, what I'm trying to do is directly stack my pelvis on top of my rib cage. We have this stack going on, which means our diaphragm, our pelvic floor, and our thoracic diaphragm are aligned. That allows for simultaneous ascension and descension upon inhalation and exhalation, as it should in normal breathing. If we are not stacked and we have an anterior pelvic tilt, then we lose the ability to simultaneously ascend and descend effectively. I'm going to be very relaxed in this position, and I'm just going to breathe for about 5 breaths in through my nose, out through my mouth. Another position that is really good for this is a quadruped position, just an all fours position. This is great because gravity is going to push down on me and expand my chest wall, which will allow me to then get this expansion up top that's very much often missing in these types of individuals. In this quadruped position, I want to have my hands directly underneath my shoulders and knees directly underneath my hips. I want to tuck my pelvis posteriorly slightly, and we don't want to excessively round our back here. We just want to unlock our elbows a little bit, push the floor away slightly, which is going to bring our rib cage back, and then keep that with our head up. We're going to breathe out through our mouth with that big open sigh, and then we're going to inhale through our nose. We don't want to feel our abs excessively here. We just want to make sure we're getting full exhales.